Welcome to Don't Get It Twisted, moving beyond politeness.
Yay!
Delphi, you gotta do it.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to get my notes together now.
Hi, Delphi.
Listen.
Welcome to our new little show platform thing. We're trying to get hooked up and rolling.
So, just to jump right in, we just want to know how you got here, like how you got to be a part of CT, how you got to be in LA dancing, how you got to be here in America living, like how did you get here, wherever here is for you?
All right, so I'm gonna start from the beginning. So first, my family's from Haiti, so my mom moved here many years ago, and I was born in Brooklyn, New York. Growing there for many years. It wasn't until when I was 19 when I moved to LA. When I moved to LA, I actually moved to LA with just $125 in my pocket. And I was literally like, I'm gonna go visit for a month with just a hope and a dream. And literally within the first 2 weeks, I booked a job that was like more than $1,000. And then I just kept rolling the money over and like kept surviving and getting through. So come to LA was more of a like experiment. Let me just try and see how it's gonna work out. And by the grace of God, I was able just to like stay and keep making money throughout the process. With CT, that was interesting because I knew members of CT for many years, and I got invited to come in a few times throughout the years, but I was always busy with other stuff, and I was always just like, I want to do it, but right now is just not the time to do it. So I'm happy the time when it did happen, and I just think it's perfect timing because I was already exiting from the commercial world, from being consistent in the commercial world. So I would now be able to truly give my time into being CT, when before it would have been a lot more of like, I want to be here, but I just booked a job, so I gotta go.
I will never forget. I went to the floor one night and was having me a good old time, and then I saw this saucy little man getting his whole entire life in the middle of the cipher, and I was like, who is this beast? Like, who is that? I need to know who that is. And I think I had my Contra-Tiempo shirt on. Not sure why I went out with a Contra-Tiempo shirt on, but I did. And I just like, and I don't do this, by the way, like ever, but I walked up to him, like stormed over and was like, what's your name? You're awesome. He was like, oh, I'm Dalphe. Hi, nice to meet you. I was like, listen, I'm Toledo. I work with this company named Contra-Tiempo. I don't even know if we're auditioning or hiring, but like you are exactly what we look for. Like you as a dancer, as a mover, as a spirit, like it wasn't even just about the way that you move inside of all of these different styles that we navigate, but it was just your energy and your light was like contagious. And so it's funny because it's a memory that sticks out to me. And I'm sure that's why you kept getting invitations to come be a part of the company, because it's such a privilege.
Yeah,
So
Jeanette, a
nice to have
bunch of
you.
other people.
Yeah, right?
No,
That's probably
yeah,
talked to
everybody
you
kept
so many
telling me. She was
times.
like, join. I was like, I want to, but I want to be able to be there and be committed.
Yeah.
So,
I'm wondering, like, how do you feel that you fit into the activism side of what we do? Um, yeah, like you're a strong dancer, you're a strong teacher, and I'm just wondering how you fit into the activism.
the funny thing is, I actually feel like I'm like new to activist work, so I don't feel like I'm off the back like someone who's been like doing it for years and everything like that. So I feel like I've been getting sense of just the support of it, and I've been happy to help out and like volunteer and like be involved in it. So to me, I feel like I'm still like a baby bird, like getting his wings to like fly more within it. So to me, I've been happy to learn from the group and to give my opinion on my real life experience to help within the company and stuff that's going on, which I think has also been good because just to have an outside dart and process from what you guys are normally used to. So I feel like that's how I've been helpful in the company.
Yeah, Delphi, I do feel like you offer a totally different perspective than what
Mm-hmm.
is usually heard in CT, and and it's so valuable because you say something and we're like, oh, oh yeah, that's
Um,
right.
and it's always really poignant, and you don't say something unless it's like got some weight behind it. That I think is also really important inside of these conversations and inside of this movement. Of course, of course. In line with that, right? We are a group of multiracial human beings that are existing in completely different spaces that happen to come together to create dope art, right? And a lot of the times the conversation, obviously, because CONTRA-TIEMPO is recognized as a Latinx dance company, I think by a lot of folks that don't know the complexities of our work. And so we have around a lot of conversations around Latinidad and what Latinidad means, right? Which is this like ambiguous thing because being Latino can be such a spectrum of different identities and faces and voices. And sometimes that ends up getting into a conversation around uh, who fits into the conversation, right? Like whose voice is most important inside of this activist conversation. Um, on the line of the spectrum of color, like colorism, I guess you could, call it in that scale, like who fits here and who fits there. And this really, I'm just gonna say it. This really stupid thing that we do to one another, like looking at each other and being like, yo, you're not this and you're not that and da da da, when we're all inside of this fight together. And I think recognizing where we stand is important, but also like there's complications there. So I guess what I'm asking you is, and Stanley as well, right? As the two Black identifying folks in the room, right? How does that feel to be a part of, like, to be a fly on the wall inside of those conversations when they're happening?
For me, it's interesting in those conversations. Also, because again, for me, being a Haitian person, um, a lot of people don't realize like a lot of the style of our culture stuff. Like growing up, we all our parties, we had merengue music, we had salsa music, like we was in it at all times too, and people know Dominican Republic, but when it comes to Haiti, it's like, where's that? I'm like, well, it's right next door. You just gotta knock real quick. And it's like,
Just take a
it's
step
right next
over.
door. So, so I always felt like it's the idea of, at least for even being Haitian, being kind of separated, where people don't consider it on the same playing field of those things. But we do have a lot of things that is relatable and understandable towards those ways. So to me, when I'm in the conversation with people, and maybe people talking about certain skin tones and stuff like that, I'm just like, to me, I think it's important to talk about different like things like that because that's like all of our cultures and ideas. But to me, I find it interesting because I feel like I always feel everything's a mix. I don't like the whole idea of everything being so separated never felt comfortable for me, even dance wise. Like my dance style has never been like it's this style right here. For me, everything is mixed together. So it's something where I feel like it's necessary, but it's also uncomfortable at times because I feel like by the idea of trying to separate so much, to me, I feel like that's how like we get to those issues, and I feel like that's how so many races have issues with each other because we focus so much on because you're not the skin color, you shouldn't be able to do this or you shouldn't case this, and it's like what? Like, didn't we all go through oppression and different like struggles and different things? So I feel like the idea of separating those things is what keep us separate. And I feel like it's good to talk about it, but it's when it gets to that emotional place of like anger or rage, where it's like we need to like bring it down a bit, and listen to everybody's opinion in the conversation.
And I think for me, especially growing up in the South where it was always black and white, I look, people be like, I got a little bit of brown skin, and I'm like, you white. but and like that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. Like, okay, you're white. Like you're white. But the first time I did the Undoing Racism workshop, and they said that race is made up, and we did the whole exercises. I think we all went through it. They did the whole exercise, like, what defines race? Is it your hair? Is it your skin? Is it the shape of your nose? Like, what is it? And I was like, you know, I don't even know. I just somehow it just is. And I think that when we did have that conversation, like comparing skin tones and who am I and who am I, and da, 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 I was like, I just it just doesn't it just doesn't compute anymore. And I'm also reminded, like, the way race is constructed is black and white. Like there is no in between. And I think people confuse their Latin America identity as a race, or they use their Latin American identity as a race, and it's not a race. That's like your cultural identity. That's your ethnicity. And so that was one thing. And then I also wanted to ask, because I have heard, Dalphe, that people actually identify a lot of Caribbean countries as Latin America, even though they don't speak Spanish. So like some people say that, look at me. No, but I've heard Haitians say that I'm Latin American. I've heard Jamaicans say that I'm Latin American.
Really?
And that,
I've heard it.
Because okay, so I haven't heard it. So I'm sorry, I haven't heard it, but to me, it doesn't surprise me, because think about in general, what are we always shown as great? Let's say even if the idea of somebody, let's say even Christ, white. Like that's what we are shown. Like, so if we shown so many times of what's great and what's up, shown white. Now we shown every time what is the bad side or black magic or whatever cases is always towards dark. So even for black people, we go certain things, we go to, well, I want to be better. So I'm not going to say I'm what I am. I'm going to say I'm part of this. So then I'm at a higher status and I'm at a higher place, which to me is foolishness, because it's the difference between being inside the house slave and an outside the house slave. Just because you're inside the house doesn't mean you got all this,
You're
like,
still a slave.
you fancy stuff, you're still a slave. So we all still went through those certain things, but because we are taught the idea, and which happens from, slavery and everything, they try to separate us. They don't want us to be together, because when we come together, it's like what Haiti did, and we tear things up, and now we end up going to freeing everyone from the things, So it's that idea where people keep running away from it. Even in Jamaica, certain places, people are bleaching their skin more. People are like trying to like be as white as possible, so they could be as pure as possible, so they could feel like even the idea of they're more holy or whatever case is. And it's just part of the brainwashing. So it's part of the idea when people say something, that's why I get that look, is it's like people are just being brainwashed to the idea, thinking that they are better if they're not as dark. So when I see like dark skin, like people like, yeah, like I'm not black, I'm Latin. I'm like, what are you?
You might be a black Latino. Like
yeah,
that's but you're still black.
But to take away, you can't just take away one because you prefer the other one and it seems better in society. Like you can be both, obviously. But when you try to take away one, that's when I have the issue, because it's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
100%.
No, that's real. That's real. I had a conversation with somebody a few weeks ago who was offended by being called white passing. He was Latino and he was offended by being called white passing. And I was like, oh, he called me and was like, I want to have this conversation with you. And I was so nervous because I was like, I do not identify as Latina. Like, I'm not ready to have this conversation. And I just didn't feel ready. But I'm wondering, and like, I mean, Talia, you chime in too as a white passing Latina. Like, I'm just wondering what is it that, why is race so like connected to ethnicity? Like, and I go back and forth between, I don't want to be called black, I'm African American, but then I also am like, but I don't identify with Africa. I have no like emotional ties to Africa. and so I'm just black. I'm just a black American, and so I go back and forth between these different ideas. And so I'm wondering, like, what is it that has race so intimate with ethnicity?
Well, I think, and I'll just, speak to the idea of white passing. First off, I want to say I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, starting this off with I don't know. I have opinions and things that I've picked up along the way, but I don't know. And number two, that it's like it's a growing process for me, and I think for a lot of folks that look like me, that identify as Latino, that have these really, really strong cultural bonds and heritages, that have walked into spaces and been not welcomed in those spaces because of those strong bonds and cultures and heritages, and also have walked into spaces and been completely enveloped in love because of, not being scary, or not being someone that's intimidating, or being someone that, like, oh, well, you look enough like me for me to feel comfortable, right? I can distinguish those things and have been, all of that is a part of Latinx stories, right? And I think for quote unquote white passing Latinos, which I think is like a weird statement anyway, because like you mentioned earlier, right? Like the idea of race and your ethnicity are two different things. But because we can't pinpoint exactly what race is, it's completely dependent on the country that you're from. It's completely dependent on where you are in the immediate, right? Like here, I'm a Latina. Here, I'm considered a quote unquote person of color. In Brazil, I'm white as hell. You know what I mean? And that's real. Like that's geographical. Like that has nothing to do with my actual skin tone. And so I think for a lot of Latinos, because those things get coincided and collided so many times, it's very, very difficult to separate the two, because it feels like you're breaking a part of yourself off and like letting that go. Like it feels like if I say, yes, I am white passing, yes, I walk into spaces and I have privilege, then I'm saying that I'm one of them. And the experiences that I've had growing up are not the experiences of one of them. So what am I saying, right? But the reality is that, yes, it is complicated. And yes, I am one of them. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, as a light skin Latina, there are privileges that I go around having every single day that I'm sure still to this day go unchecked. And that's because I am like constantly trying to do the work, you know what I mean? And like to learn as much as I possibly can and to undo as much as I possibly can. And still, I'm 100% positive there are things that I don't see, right? And so I think and I'm not saying this is necessarily like a good, bad, what, like wherever folks are on their journey, like just be there on your journey and continue to grow upwards. You know what I mean? And I think it's a very, it's a toxic thing that Latinos are sort of like juggling constantly of like, where do we fit in, right? If this world was created in this white and black spectrum, and when I say, this world, you know what I mean? But if we're walking through the world in this white and black spectrum, Latinos are trying to find like where on that spectrum they exist. And there is nowhere on that spectrum that you exist, not fully, because you are in the liminal, you are in the in-between. Like our history means that inside of my genetic makeup, I am a little bit of everything. You know what I mean? Like there are parts, I get asked all the time, what are you? Like I'm some kind of like creature or something, like, I'm a human. Like I'm a woman. I don't know. What are you asking? Which I know exactly what they're asking, right? Like, where do you come from? What's your genetic makeup? And I don't know. And so it's like riding inside of that spectrum for Latinos. It makes it so that we start to like beat each other up about where we are. But the reality is I don't walk around like a black woman. I don't have that story. I don't have that experience. And so at the end of the day, there are privileges that come with that I think people need to check, regardless of like how light your skin tone is and how this and that and the other. Like as Latinos, we do need to start doing that work.
Also, I would like to add that I feel like it is constantly in our society for many, many years put in a way of living a better lifestyle if you're lighter. So it's the whole red line and everything. Like it's okay if you in a certain category, you'll live an easier and better lifestyle. So when people like everybody in the world, we all have our selfish needs. So if we obviously see like, well, if I'm lighter, my lifestyle could be better, even if it's not fully true.
Yeah.
But if that image is being presented, that's why we have blacks who are bleaching their skin to get lighter because like, well, I want to get the job or I want to cases. So when our world is constantly built on that, if you're lighter, you get better opportunities. People are going to shy away from the idea of being darker. That's why also now when someone of darker skin is being hurt, people are like, well, that's not me, that's not my people. They're easily able to separate because it's the idea society is telling us if you're lighter, you're gonna live a better lifestyle, you're gonna have certain privileges more. And if you're darker, you're it's almost like you're deserving to be lower. You're deserving to be in a certain category. Like, oh, the same idea, or if you're darker, you can deal with more pain. So if there's a black woman giving birth, it's like, oh, she don't need anesthesia, like she can handle pain. So it's that idea that I feel like a lot of people don't even realize they're doing it, but because it's so ingrained in our society and even other cultures and places, is like we do it without even knowing it. Like even for me growing up, like it was like I had foolish ideas of growing up. Like, well, I wish I was lighter, because what I'm seeing is who gets the better jobs, who are the stars, who are the cases, and it seems like to get those success in life, you need to be a certain skin tone, which is not true.
No, yeah. And I feel like the deeper we dive into it, the more contradictions you find. Like the less it makes sense. Like you grow up and it's like, oh, that's just the way it is. But like the more you're like, that doesn't even make any sense. What are you talking about? And it's a mess. It's a total mess.
Can I also just say, like, for whoever is watching this, our audience who like that, we keep mentioning the Undoing Racism workshop as like a reference point, and I just wanted to like throw out there that's something that we did through the Institute of, oh my gosh,
People's Institute for Survival and Beyond.
That's what it is. People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. It's an incredible workshop. People should go check it out. You should absolutely look up this organization. They're really dope. But I just
it's really good no matter what race, ethnicity you identify as.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, just like as a reference point so that we know that. All right, so Dalphe, I got a question for you then.
Cool.
So, in terms of this conversation of the Black experience within, like, the stories of CONTRA-TIEMPO, right? Within the conversations that we're actually having on stage in our artwork, obviously, it's an important conversation to have. I think it's one that we've been having for a while, but I also think that gets paired with like this conversation around, well, am I as the only Black man in the company being tokenized in some way? And so I just want to know, as an outsider sort of looking in, like, how do you feel about that? Like, how do you feel, do you feel like the stories that we're telling feel, you know, complete? Like, something where you feel you are comfortable inside? I don't know how I'm asking this. If you feel like you're comfortable inside of it, or is it something where sometimes you often feel like, oh, I'm being pinned as the Black man in the company, and like where do we ride that line?
For me, I don't feel that way, only because I've actually experienced it on multiple cases when working in the dance industry, like TV, movie-wise. Like I've done a lot of like Nickelodeon, Disney, and other stuff like that, and that's when I was the token Black guy. That's when, and feeling the difference between that is where it seemed like they're picking everybody, like, all right, we need somebody dark, and it's like he's just enough. He's dark enough. He's like too dark, but he's like just enough to fit the category. And then when I'm put in the work, I'm just put to like in the back or just put to the side. Like you could tell there's no more importance of me being there in the sense of my skills is not being pushed to the front to be shown or something like that. It's just we need to add some color in there, so we throw in this black guy right there. So I've experienced that strongly in the dance world, and the way I felt different that through CT, even doing the piece Brown with Stanley, is that piece is showing like two black people interacting, like showing affection in a non-sexual way, empowering and bringing it out. So to me, it's like not just, okay, we got a black man in the room, but we telling a story about the skin tone, and we showing ways of highlighting, spotlighting it, and elevating it, and instead of the idea of just like, he's there, let's just put him to the side to add some color, so we not be called racist because he's just he's in the room, he's there, right? So you see, we did our job. We threw the one black guy in there. So that is like, trust. I've experienced it so much. Whereas like at first, like yes, I'm booking these jobs and I was happy. Then I started realizing I'm like, I'm continuing being the only black guy in all these jobs, and I'm just being put on the like third line, fourth line to the side, and I'm never in the front. So it's like, what am I really here for?
So as someone who's going to be re-navigating the world once it opens back up, right? And as someone who has been a commercial dancer for such a long time and been inside of that world, now you've kind of experienced both. First question is, when the world opens back up, are you interested in reinserting yourself into the commercial world? And number two, how will that look different for you, having this like new understanding, and also like knowing that you're not wanting to be this tokenized person inside of these spaces anymore? Like, how are you going to navigate that now differently?
Good question. One thing, I feel like I try to be a real like realistic person where even though if I don't like certain things, the reality of life and society, it is what it is. And I could fight against that. You also lose opportunities from fighting against that. And naturally, from being from New York, I'm a hustler by heart. So to me, it's, like, it's real. Like, I'm married, I'm moving towards ideas, having kids, stuff like that. To me, like, I'm still trying to work and do different things. So would I still work in the commercial world? Sure, I would still work in the commercial world. And if they book me because in their opinion, I'm that nice skin tone black guy to be in this part, like, I'm still gonna do the job. Now, if I'm in the job and the things are being said in a certain way, that is where it will be a different conversation. If things are being like said, if it's like, oh, black man, just move there, or like if things are being said a certain way. But I'm saying like that is what would make me be like, okay, I'm not messing with you guys at all anymore. Right. But to me, if I get hired on a job and I am the only black guy on set, all I'm gonna do now is just talk pro-black stuff most of the time. I'm just gonna be like, if you're gonna have me here, you're gonna have to hear me.
I love
so
that.
I feel like that's like my way of like, if I'm gonna be still involved and if I'm still gonna do the jobs, that's gonna be fine. But then I'm gonna use that power that if I'm in those rooms to speak up more about different things. And if I am on a job and they treat me not well, even like how they like to do dances sometimes and not treat well, I'll say comic, I like to joke around. I'm like, you guys know slavery is over, right? That whole thing. And I know I'm the only one in the room who's like this skin tone, but you know it's not a thing no more, right? So we're not gonna be treating this way, okay?
I want to be a fly in the wall. Just everything mad and comfortable.
You know what's the worst thing? The worst thing is I love having really good jobs and jobs that's like there's no issues. But sometimes I wish I'd be like, test me today. I'd be like, let today be the day because I have a book ready. I'd be like, I wish my book is ready. Okay, so
I got notes.
I got notes. All right.
I got notes.
I'm ready.
Sure.
I also feel I want to give the dance industry a little bit of credit. I feel like this summer has like cracked open and has like revealed folks to be pillars of racial justice inside of the commercial dance industry, and I do feel like we're very fortunate to be living and working in this time, that there are people who are coming up as choreographers and as teachers, and as mentors that are like speaking out about this.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, like even 5 years ago, 5 years ago, it was terrible. It was terrible. People were getting away with anything and everything. But I do feel like we're fortunate that there are people on the up and up that are coming, that are going to speak on it.
But people are also digging their own graves.
That's true. That's true. And you know, social media.
This stuff was good.
Social media has been a great tool for exposing people.
Absolutely.
Shout out to dancers, be like.
Right.
Also, not to be the shady one, but
Ooh.
also because I've worked in the industry for a really long time, and I want to have the hope that people would do better now. I've also seen many times between choreographers where if it's lighter skin, black, brown with cases, they after that paper. So if the producers want a certain thing, they fall in line real quick. So even though our dance community mindset could be changing, but still we need to change the producers and the higher ups. That's where the mindset needs to start there, because once they say, hey, we want a certain thing, very few choreographers, I'm not saying all because that'd be a lie, very few choreographers will actually stand up and be like, no, we need some more brown people in this room. No, we need some more of this.
But you know, those producers, they're after money too. And the only way they're going to get money is by the audiences that are willing to support them. So if we can change the masses, we change, like, it's a cycle. We change like the hoi polloi's mindset, and the producers are going to be like, oh, this is what the hoi polloi are going to buy, so this is what we need to create. And then the choreographers will be like, okay, I can get with that. And then the dancers will be like, okay, I can get with that. It's a whole cycle. Like, they're after the money too, and we're the ones who's giving them the money.
I also think we have agency in that. Sorry, I got excited by what you were saying. We have agency in that when we are asked to like take on those positions, right? Like, I know so many folks who in their classroom are like laying out the historical context of these dances, like know the history in and out. They know the main people that, like, you know, brought these dance forms up, the whole 9 yards. And then they get into a setting where they're producing something for someone, right? And the person's like, oh, I want X, Y, and Z. Like, you have the education to challenge them on that a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, you know how to navigate that conversation in a way where you're not pissing anybody off. Because the majority of the time, like, at least I'm not a big, like, commercial dancer. That's not my thing. But the few times that I've been in that setting, like, most of the times, the higher ups don't know what they're talking about. Like, they want you to put it together because they don't want a deal. They just want to do the money part. So if you're like, yo, I think if we just X, Y, and Z, you know, it'll be a little bit more, like, you don't even have to get into the explanation as to why. Just be like, I think it'll work a little bit better. Can we do it this way? Most of the times they're going to be like, yeah, because they're too lazy to fight you on it. You know what I mean? And I've seen people not push back for that fear. And I think it's really important for us navigating, like, the new setting of what the dance world is going to look like and the dance field is going to look like. Like, now that we have all this information, we're responsible for it, right? And so my hope is that the commercial dancers and the commercial world, like, as we're navigating forward, if something doesn't sit right, like, say something. And it doesn't have to be aggressive. It doesn't have to be crazy. It literally could just be like, yo, instead of doing, you know, X, let's do Y. And keep it pushing. And if they say no, then they were going to say no anyway. Like, at least you gave that attempt. You know what I mean?
I'm trying so hard not to be the negative person. I'm like, you know, because I think, like, it is going to happen to a period of time, because I feel like there's a new trend now. There's a trend of black and stuff like that. So I hope it don't just become a trend. I hope it becomes long-lasting.
Right.
You know, so I hope it's not just for the next 2 years. We're going to push all black stuff as much as possible. And then after that, we're going to just slowly, like, you know, I really hope it becomes a continuing thing. But my last few years in the dance industry was very strong of being on jobs, and everything being wrong, I was the one who spoke up. And I was the one who was like, nah, this is not cool. And I seeing how much dancers don't work together, seeing how much people are just so desperate for the paycheck. They're like, you know what I mean? Like, I just hope, like, what we need is financial stability and ways of making sure our pockets are good outside of the dance industry.
Yeah.
So then when we go in there, we're not going there starving. We're not going there where it's like, my precious, I just need, like, we're not going there in such a, like, starving place that we're going to take whatever they give us just because. And it's just, like, and I've been doing it for, like, more than 10 years in it, and I've just seen it so many times. And, like, I've walked off jobs before. And everyone's like, Dalphe, you being wild. And then the moment I woke up the job, weeks later, everybody else is like, we kind of started quitting after a while because you're the only one speaking up. I was like, look at that. Look at that. Yeah, so I just hope it's more than just a trend. That's where
I agree, man.
I really hope it's more than just a trend.
Yeah, I've definitely seen, like, dang, what you just said right now hit, like, of not walking into these situations starving. Like, that's huge. And for, I'll say artists in general, but, like, specifically dancers, there's a way that, like, our industry underpays us to a point where we start to devalue ourselves in spaces because we don't think we're worth it to, like, ask for more, or, like, literally just ask for the respect that you deserve walking into a space. You know what I mean? And I do encourage that all the time, is like, get a second job if you need to. Like, if this is your passion and you want to, like, take those teaching gigs, like, take the stuff that's going to set you up with a financial foundation so that you're not afraid of being like, oh, I didn't make that $100 for that day. You know what I mean? Like, cool, I'll make it up this weekend. Like, that's so huge.
and sorry, and apologies to the beehive out there, okay? I don't want the beehive coming after me, okay?
Oh, we gonna have to edit this whole thing.
We're gonna edit this whole thing out. Don't come for us. We didn't do it.
You know,
his name is
but
Dalphe
even
Morantus.
come find me, all right? It's okay. But it's like, even on the black gigs, even for black artists, they will hire all these dancers, and most of them are doing it for free. Like, I'm sorry, like, if we're working for Beyonce, for these people, it's even for the artists. Like, you know, you have all these people working for you, all these black, brown, all these skin colors working for you. We can't just do it just because the person have a big name and it's, oh, I want to do it for her and she's gonna show royalty stuff. Okay, royalty. Now, that means we need to pass that fortune down. Right. We need to make sure that we all eat them, you know? So I also encourage dancers, just because it's a big artist, doesn't mean you have to go in the room for free.
Yeah. No, big yes.
You know? Sorry, Beehive.
No, it's real.
It is real. It is real. And people like, exposure this, exposure that. And it's like, exposure is not going to pay your bills. Like, okay, you did that job and you got, what, 100 extra followers?
Right.
Is that, what's that mean? Like, that doesn't mean anything.
It makes that exposure thing makes me so angry. And every single time I get into a, like, financial conversation with young people, because it happens a lot in terms of, like, classes and, like, these conversations when they ask, like, how do you survive as a dancer? And my answer is always, don't ever do anything for free. If this is your work, if this is what you do for a living, you have trained your whole life. If you're working for an hour, it's not just that hour that they're paying for. They're paying for the whole 15 years of training that you've been doing to be in that position. You know what I mean? Like, that exposure thing is so bonkers to me that people are still falling for that ish.
Also, playing devil advocate. I like to always play both sides, yeah? I think if you are a business person and you know how to switch things around, you can use exposure for more if it's the idea that you're not doing it just because you're getting more likes, but you're going to learn how to take those likes and convert it to money for yourself. So if the artist is going to give you a direct, like, thank you to this person in all cases, and now you're getting these files, getting these certain things. Now if you have a product that you can sell to these people, You know, so we need to make our own business that if you are going, because even celebrities do it sometimes. They might go on a show and they might go for free on the show, but they promoting their album. They promoting like one of the cases. So if you have something you build in behind yourself besides just being a backup dancer, then you can push it that more. Because what I would say, which I was bad at, is I worked on job with other big artists and different people, and I wasn't the one doing pictures and all this stuff. And because I was like, nah, man, I'm here just for work, and I was trying to like stick to my mold and stuff like that. And yes, that's good. At the same time, if I did do that times, maybe I would have a lot more followers. Which now, when I'm doing my different projects and doing different things, I could pull in those same people to make money for myself. So there is, I always feel like there's a balance of two different things. And I don't think it's ever just on one side all the way.
And you can also use those rooms to help build your network. So yeah, showing up and being like, I'm just here to work. I'm not going to talk to nobody. I'm just going to do my step and then go. Yeah. But like connecting with the choreographer, connecting with the videographer, connecting with the producer, like so that you can continue to build those networks. Absolutely, that's absolutely valuable.
And also, I think there's like doing something for quote unquote exposure. It only works if you have a goal in mind. Like it only works if you're ready for the hustle that comes afterwards, right? Like you can't just go and be like, oh, this is cool. Here you go. Like, let's have you dance for free in Lady Gaga's music video, da 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 da. Like if you don't walk into that setting saying, I'm going to talk to the producer. I'm going to talk to the choreographer. These are the goals. These are the things I'm going to get out of it. I'm going to get at least 100 new followers. I'm going to, like, if you don't walk in with that mentality, if you're just like, oh, cool, Lady Gaga, I'm going to put it on my resume. Like, you're not going to get anywhere. And I think, like, kind of taking it back to CT, I think CONTRA-TIEMPO for me is a huge example of that because I was an apprentice for 2 years doing unpaid work. Now, the reason I did it is because I knew I wanted to get on the company eventually, right? And I knew that at the time it wasn't going to work out for me. I had to grow. And I was like, I did the numbers that if I'm showing up for 8 hours of rehearsal, that's 8 hours of dance training that I don't have to pay for. Like I'm making my money up somewhere else. You know what I mean? And that is opportunities that will come later, which did eventually ensue because I stuck with it and I hustled and I like had my goal in mind. But it's very easy to walk into that situation and be like, okay, deuces, I'm gonna give up. If I would have gave up even 6 months into the process, it would have been 6 months wasted because I didn't have a goal in mind. It was just like, oh, I'm just here. Oh, it's not working out. It's not turning into anything. Like you gotta have like, Dalphe is the king of the hustle mentality. But there's got to be that goal in mind, right? Like, and I'm going to get to that goal at all costs. Like, it doesn't have to be, you know, you don't have to be like, oh, this is the only way to get here. Like, it can look like multiple different entradas, but, like, there has to be a goal at the end.
Mm-hmm. CT's on a break. You know, we're still moving. We're still talking with each other, but, like, we're not doing hardly anything or what we used to be doing. And so, yeah, we're just wondering, why do you still believe in this work? Why are you still here? Why did you say yes to talking to us today?
First of all, I like y'all. I do believe in the work because the time when we was on the road and the time of doing the shows, like, again, I've done so many shows in my dance life that I can't even count it. But whenever I did shows, even for artists and other people on stage, it was always just like, people came up to me like, oh, you're dope. And it was like, good job on stage, you're dope. Like, that's like a very like narrow like idea of people appreciating your work. When I've done shows for CT and was on the road, like seeing like even older generation, I still like grandmas and grandpas like, boy, ooh, those moves and the way you touched me in my soul and everything that happened. I was like, ooh, talk more. Tell me. I want to hear it. You know, like it's the way of it's touching people is more than just like a dance skill, more than just like, oh my God, it's like that was a cool step. You know, like people are actually crying after. People are actually like, we're touching people in a different way. People are like, oh my God, the rest of the world really need this. Like, this is going to change people. And like, we've had people who came saw the show multiple times. And multiple times when we was in like a different state, different place, they like drove. I was like, you drove? Like, You know, so it's it's that idea of touching people that I want to get back to because I lost interest in the dance industry a little while back because I felt like everything was just so like superficial. Everything was just very like okay, it was cool for this moment, but it was never a long lasting feeling of feeling like impacting people and really making a difference. And because I'm also really new to this work, I do feel like I need help and guidance in the idea of working with a company to keep pushing the work and keep learning. Like you were saying before, being with them for 2 years to learn more into it. So to me, I'm still sticking with it because I do want to grow more in this work. I still want to push more and like and find new ways to do this because I'm going to have kids one day. My kids are going to grow up black. They are going to grow up in this world, not in this country, but in this world. So, so I want to be able to even get this information so I could pass it on to my kids. So I could like give them real information to help them in the future, like outside of just teaching them a cool dance step, but knowledge to help them grow and be able to reach and touch other people in different ways.
We're out here talking a whole lot about children, and you know how your wifey feel about that.
Yo,
Like,
she got headphones on.
Babies?
Yo,
Look,
I be like,
I'm surprised I didn't see her head pop up in the corner.
Yeah. Pop up in the corner.
Yo.
Thank you so much, Dalphe.
Words of wisdom from international.
Yes.
Yes.